Hello there.
Hey,
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. I'm just glad I got through the second day of school. Oh.
Yeah. Quite an ordeal.
It is, especially when all the kids are like, they don't know what to do, or they think they don't know what to do.
Yeah, they've all got amnesia now. That is exactly right.
Yep. They're like, we can't wear this? What do you mean?
Exactly.
Sorry.
Well, a million years ago, in a land far, far away, one of my jobs, well, it fell under my purview when I was in the central office. I remember what iteration it was, but anyway, I worked with young principals and young APs, training them to do technology, power school, a lot of the things that we'll do that we'll learn about tangentially in 603. But when you're in the role, you have to learn it. I mean, you have to. And as you probably know, Power School has a lot of modules on the administrative end that teachers never have to be involved with or see. But new administrators have to learn all that. And so when we would get largest district in the state, so when we'd get new principals in or we'd get new APs, I had a staff, that technology people that would train them, but I would go out and meet with them and try to impress upon them, just like I do with y'all, the importance of data collection, and that you can't let it pile up. And, there's reporting laws, and we're going to all lose our jobs and our houses if you don't follow through on all this stuff. We're tired of defending ourselves against Office of Civil Rights complaints and all of those things. And so I had this young AP, and he was at a high school, a large high school in the eastern part of the county. And one of the things that I wasn't there to do, but one of the things I had to explain to him was that how you end school is how you'll start school the next year. And if you let all these kids come in bathing suits and crop tops and, they had about, I don't know, Independence had about maybe 3,000 kids at that time. And I was out there one day, and it was late May, early June. I mean, it was like the last week of school, and they had 3,000 kids with enough clothes on them for about 400. I mean, it was just brutally bad. And I said, Sam, I don't want to be here in the fall when this bunch comes back, because y'all have let this thing let it get sideways. For whatever reason. And it was a bad year. It was the year of 9/11 in 2001, and bomb threats and shooting. It was just a bad year, and they kind of let it get away at the end, kind of like we did last year in the spring, because of what was going on, and we kind of let it get away. And I said, Sam, this place will be untenable in the fall. You might as well just understand now that it's going to be untenable. That if every time you back up, they'll step forward. And we had a devil of a time that fall getting them to even go back to the rooms, much less come dressed appropriately. And I'm afraid that a lot of schools are going to be that way this year. With kind of just get them back in the building last year. We don't care what they do, if they do anything, or we don't worry about having any kind of structure or rules or any of that. We just want to get them back. Well, you're going to pay the price this fall for that, I'm afraid. That's just one of the truisms of the school business.
Yeah.
No good deed goes unpunished in the school business. And,
give them an inch, they'll take 20 miles.
Well, I've got a young group on Monday nights that I just love them. They're beginning teacher. Basically, they're just out of the beginning teacher mode, and they're getting their first master's degree. And I'm working with them, and they just tickle me to death. It does my heart good to see how young and naive they are. want to be their friends and all that. And I'm like, yeah, that won't work.
Yeah.
They're not like puppies. They won't ever lay down and let you scratch their bellies. You got to whip them every day.
They're more like cats. Scratch my belly, I'll give you a scratch.
You got to whip them every day. You won't ever have a day when they just come in and they're easy and cooperate. Doesn't work that way. So they tickle me though. They are a lot of fun. Sarah, how are you? Sarah Sellers.
I am good. How are you doing?
Good.
I've been working on my dissertation.
That's what I'm checking now. You noticed that one that I sent you was mine from a long time ago, but it's pretty much the methodology I think that we'd like to do, or that you would like to do.
Yeah, I did notice. I printed it out and everything.
We don't have to do all of that. That one was a little bit over the top. We don't have to do all of that, but it'll be a similar type methodology, because you're trying to get to the heart of the same thing.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah.
So I'm, for good or bad, I'm with you. Just whenever you get something, write it, send it to me on your own schedule, and we'll do that. And biggest thing is we're going to have to figure out how we're going to collect your data.
Mm-hmm. I know I'm here for it. My lit review went from 30 pages to 7, so I'm working on it.
Yeah,
I'm going. I mean, it's life. I'm going into work an hour early and working on it. So I actually went from like 5 to 7 pages this morning. So I'm getting there. I have hope.
Well, that's good, and we'll figure out a way that we can get a handle on your data. Mm-hmm. Because that's always the trick. Everybody thinks writing is the trick, but the trick is how do you get your data, and how do you get it in a form when you collect it, so that with the idea, this is how I can then analyze it. And I know that you've had methodology. How we collect it's how we can analyze it.
Yeah.
And we generally just get one shot at that. So what we're really hoping is for you is we'll figure out a way to get some access and get the data and get it in a usable way. That's way down the road, but you got to be thinking about that up front.
Yeah, for sure. But once again, I appreciate what you've done for me, and Dr. Laws as well.
Well, we told you, y'all are our favorite bunch. We love working with y'all, or just kind of hanging around y'all. We like hanging around smart people. We're hoping that we'll get some by osmosis.
I think that's a profound statement, that you get Dale Lamb as your chair and you go from 30 pages to 7 pages. I would like you to make that public.
I would too. Nobody be bothered. Nobody, my phone won't ring.
The line, "What were you thinking?" might come into play.
That pops right up there. I can tell you.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome on this last Tuesday in August. Can you believe the month has flown by, and now I would say it's almost safe to say that all of us are in school. Several school districts started yesterday, and I hope everything's going well. Anybody have any stories? We can start with story time. If you have any stories from your experiences.
Okay, well, I can share. We've been in school since August 15th. And we have had some Fight Club going on. But they're not real smart about it. They didn't get the first rule of Fight Club, is that you don't talk about Fight Club. And they didn't get that second rule either, that you don't talk about Fight Club. They put it on Instagram, and every time they get busted, they do a new Instagram page. The first 2 weeks of school were a little rough. And it's weird. Like, these kids, we didn't have this kind of trouble from them last year, so they've lost their minds over the summer. But this week has been calmer. It's only Tuesday, but it's been calmer. So
yeah, it's a little early to say that, right?
I know it is a little fearful, but it's been interesting. Watched a girl dive from the bleachers down to attack another girl. I swear she could be an American Ninja Warrior. I got to see the video and I was like, what was that?
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff you see on, what is it, WWE or whatever it is now?
Yeah.
Off the top rope.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, eventful. Let's hope for some calm now.
Yes, we do. We do. Anybody else? Any other stories?
I heard kids curse for the first time in school. I'm new to middle school, so I've taught elementary for 13 years. So today I was walking with them as they were coming back from their encore, and I kind of blended in with them, so they didn't know that I was a teacher, and they were just cursing. And I kind of froze because I was like, oh my God, they're cursing. But I'm like, you're the teacher, so you got to get them together. So it was kind of like weird to me.
Well, yeah, I guess the line "get used to it" will be coming to play. Then, right?
Yeah, welcome to middle school.
Yeah. So to go along with Shantae, I'm going to tell this story, and I'm going to use a semi-bad word, but not a terrible word. Okay. So my good friend John Biles, some of you that have Gaston County ties.
But you mean confirming with Gaston, right?
Maybe I'll see if I can get him to send out an email that blatantly says that.
There we go.
That way it's not like it's coming from you.
So you can say there's a little bit of concern.
Just unmute yourself now. Steve, just unmute yourself. I got everybody muted.
So my
now.
good friend John Biles had been he was with me as assistant principal, and he'd always been in the middle school. Actually, we were junior high schools. That's how long ago it was. And his first principalship was in elementary school. And so he tells this story so beautifully, much better than I will. But a teacher brought a child to his office and said, Mr. Biles, and whatever the kid's name is, he used the F word. And John said, well, I'll take care of it. And so anyway, John goes into why you don't use the F word at school. And it was a lengthy lesson for the young man. And then at the end, he said, now you understand that you're not going to use the word F in class. And he said, well, yes, sir. But I didn't use that word. I used fart. And so it was it was kind of a comeuppance for John that he had to learn the vernacular of elementary and middle school, because I think you got the one F word maybe in elementary a little more, and the other F word maybe a little more prominently in middle school. So John tells that one much better than me, but I can relate to that because I've not been an elementary person myself. So unfortunately, I'm more accustomed to hearing the other. So Shantae, welcome to the secondary school world, and you're going to hear a lot of good words, I am sure. So anyway, everybody, it was so good to see you tonight, and thank you for being with us. And it's clouding up here in beautiful Gaston County, so maybe we'll get another shower in a minute, but maybe not. And so tonight we've got 3 presentations. We ought to move rather quickly, but we've got some good case studies to talk about. And tonight's chapters from the principal book are certainly areas of expertise for all of you, because this is the curricular chapters, and if you include the capacity building chapter of chapter 9. So let's have a good time with it. Shantae, lead us off.
Okay, so I have permission to share my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, can you guys see that?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so chapter 6 is about the school curriculum. So we're starting with the standards-based curriculum, and the state and federal agencies are in charge of what should be taught and how it should be delivered. The change was made to enhance the achievement of all students and to equalize the opportunities, which is where we came in with the No Child Left Behind Act. The states they have participated in developing the standards, and then they created standardized assessments that are aligned to the standards, which is why we use the Common Core state standards, and that's the most recent adopted by the United States. And the academic areas that it covers is math and ELA. And if you guys notice, a lot of people complained about it because it moved away from memorization and like rote learning. So it provides the learner with higher or order thinking and conceptual understanding. So states and local districts decide what materials and curriculum that will be used. So when we talk about curriculum theories, there are 4 different types of I've been saying this word crazy all day. Technological, academic, humanistic, and social reconstructionist. So the knowledge of the curriculum theory is important to know from the conservator's role, which is understanding the nature of what's being taught, and then the innovator's role, which is being prepared to restructure the curriculum to meet the needs of the students. So the leader pretty much provides the direction of the content and delivery. And the innovator is the advocate for the necessary change. So in the book, they talked about John McNeil, and he presented us with these 4 theories of curriculum. And it developed the understandings by pretty much helping us to understand, considering the purposes of them. So the technological and the academic, as you see on the left side, is to educate the rational person and to promote intellectual growth of the individual. And then the humanistic and social and reconstructionism, they were developed by the understandings of considering the purposes in which to promote the democratic social living and to improve and reconstruct society. So its focus is mostly on social reform and change. So technological curriculum and roles. It's referred to, according to the book, as like a measured curriculum, and it contains like behavioral objectives, time on task, sequential learning, positive reinforcement, direct instruction, things that we are very familiar with, achievement testing, mastery and skills. This is probably the most used curriculum that a lot of us are familiar with. The principal functions as the manager by seeing that the things are taught have been designed to monitor and keep track of the progress, which is kind of like what they do now, and making sure that we are helping the kids to achieve in their high test scores. And the teachers produce high gains in the productivity. So the teacher's role is to monitor the students' progress, what we do. And that could be shown through monitoring it by progress, monitoring them in our state achievement test that we have to use. And we as teachers will take responsibility for the student's success or lack of. So the academic curriculum and roles, the purpose of that is to teach the students how to do research and train their minds. And that was super, super fluent whenever they first wrote out the Common Core standards. That approach is pretty much the core knowledge of what students should possess in learning, helping them to be independent learners. And the curriculum is about maximizing a student's potential where they can show us what they know. And the orientation is really placed on excellence. So with that being said, the principal's role is to model and encourage excellence throughout the school and have high motivation for them to achieve and be high achievers. And learning is celebrated highly within those schools. And the teacher's role is to be just a disseminator of knowledge, pretty much. We plan the learning in this role and the activities, and it's with less input on the students, and we give direct instruction. The humanistic perspective in roles, it focuses primarily on the individual. It's a holistic approach to learning, and it focuses on the cognitive and psychomotor areas to maximize the individual. Like, so they really focus on self-awareness and forming moral and ethical principles for oneself is the goal. The book mentioned Goldman's theory, and it suggested that emotional intelligence is pretty much important by knowing one's emotions and managing them, motivating oneself. This is really focusing on, it reminded me when I first read of like self-assurance, self-love. And it's big because this is what promotes people in the schools to be, the students to be role models. And so the principal role is to serve in this role as a role model and make positive interactions with human relationships. So it just seems like a positive place to be in the school, if you ask me. And when it comes to the teacher's role, what I really, really liked about, which I actually do this year in my class, was allowing the students to be risk takers and allowing them to be experimental with their learning. So they take their own responsibility of their learning and behavior. So they're responsible for their own behavior, which promotes hopefully a positive self-direction. So the curriculum places personal independence and responsibilities in their own actions. So it's primarily focused on them. Oh. So the social reconstructionism and their roles, the purpose is to serve like the biggest social agent of social change. So it's designed to help individuals elevate and develop strong values, and that's why it was grouped with the humanistic, because it primarily just has everything to do with like social matters. The most important view of this curriculum is that it must be real and that it must require action and it must teach values. So that's why I chose this picture, because the first thing that came to my mind is that it does not waste time. Like it don't waste my time with this. Like I need it to be real. I need to be potent. I need to make sure that I understand it and it has values. So the principal's role in this curriculum is to find the problems and make sure that the curriculum is set on current practices. So it needs to be relevant and to make sure that it's fair to the students. And the teacher's role is just to be the facilitator of the learning process. And really the teacher must be skilled with having the students to collaborate with each other, working within groups and each other. The multicultural education under the teacher's role was an example of it. And according to the book, there were 5 principles of learning that is considered to be like really essential to the multicultural curriculum. And it was learning is actively constructed. Learning emerges from building on experience. Learning is influenced by cultural differences. Learning is influenced by the context in which it occurs, and that learning is socially meditated and it develops within a culture and community. And that is severely relevant to like the students' daily experiences, their home life, and how things should be that is relevant outside of the school life that we can bring into the school. When it comes to curriculum analysis, it starts with the state. So the Common Core Standards, of course, is an example of this. And it gives the teacher, what I love, the freedom to determine what lessons and my means of instruction. So they give me the standard and then I can deliver it how I want to. And locally, the school district, it determines the content to be taught, and the detail of the curriculum content for the school can be assumed by the professional staff or whoever is under the leadership of the principal. And sometimes it's easier, in my opinion, or less confusing to have the task to go by default, really like according to the author. So like whenever you guys get a new curriculum text and it's easy for your district to just say, well, we're going to go with the pacing that Lucy Calkins set in. And so she says that we're going to start with lesson 0 and then lesson 1 and then lesson 2 and follow that pacing. It's really easy. And then everybody in the county is like on one accord, and your school is on one accord. And like if you have a curriculum committee, to be organized. They could do that by grade level or subject matter to kind of break it down within the school. And their approach was what I found that related to the book is really popular for elementary school. In our book, this showed us the curriculum design and school improvement, and each school serves as a unique community. And according to the book, each school is responsible for the design and development of their own curriculum. But in my county, this load is really taken off of us and it's provided for us. So if you see here on the curriculum design, it starts with the curriculum and then it goes to what the student has to know. Then next it's how the students will be taught and supported and how to measure what the students have learned. So I'm really thankful because my county officials work really hard to take that load off of us when it comes to the development of breaking down and the pacing and everything with our curriculum.
Shante?
Yes.
So you work in the same county I live, so it's what's said in here stays in here. How popular do you think that is? You said you're really lucky to get it. Do you think that's a feeling of the majority of teachers?
Nope.
Okay, so
you mean like within my county, or you mean outside of the county?
Either way.
I've heard of people within the county not having the support that I have, but I think it's because they're not a classroom teacher. I think classroom teachers are the main focus within my county. And so like when it comes to guidance or media, any kind of other support, I don't think they get the same support as a classroom teacher. But outside of the county, when we share stories and I'm listening to my teacher friends talk about how much extra planning that they have to do. And I'm thinking like, why do you have to do this? Is that not in your pacing guide? Is that not in your curriculum guide? And they're like, no, we have to do X, Y, and Z. So a lot of that pressure is put on them for them to do within their PLC. And half of that is, well, not half, almost all of that is done within my county.
All right, so the pacing guides, you know, the way we deliver are developed by the district, but it would be the same pacing guide regardless. So if it's an elementary, if it's a third grade pacing guide, it would be the same at every school in the county.
Yes. However, coming from a low performing school, we would all use the same pacing guide, but my school in particular might have 100% of the resources that the pacing is suggesting versus me working at not a low performing school.
Okay, so if you were working at a low performing school, what would it be?
Yeah, my Title I low performing school would allow me to have at least 99% of what I need that the pacing guide is saying is the suggested. I mean, my curriculum guide is saying that it's suggested for me to teach that entire lesson. So if it's telling me that I need, if Lucy Calkins is the text for ELA, and it tells me that the mentor text that I need, if it's a list of 10 of them, and sometimes teachers don't have them within the county, I'll have all 10 of them at my local performance school, and I won't have to share my material. So each teacher would have them.
And the schools that are not low performing, the teachers are more on their own?
I don't think they're on their own in our county, but they are in another county that I know of, yes. So if the pacing is saying that they need a particular book, I know that Gaston County will like overnight that book to me. However, I at another county that a friend of mine works at, she like will order her own books off of Amazon or like go to the library and get them. So I'm really thankful, regardless if I worked at a low performance school or not, that the curriculum facilitators for the county, they work really hard over the summer to really like hand us the document. It's like a Bible. And at that point, if you don't follow it, or it's kind of weird because it's like, what are you doing? Like you have every single thing you need on that guide.
Yeah, I know CMS did that as well. I think they were one of the originals. Are the rest of you, do your districts lay out curriculum in that way, or is there more freedom at the school? I'm just curious.
Fort Mill has a pacing guide, but individual schools still at this time, individual schools decide what they're like. Speaking as an ELA teacher, they decide what they're doing. So if a 7th grader comes from one middle school in the district to another, they could be doing completely different skills or a book. It's not necessarily held accountable, but they are moving more towards a consistent curriculum across the district. Like I know science this year is pushing for that.
Yeah, it's a problem with the transient population, isn't it? If you're not a district-wide curriculum. Any others?
I know that in Spartanburg District 6 where I work, teachers, they gather a group of teachers from that content together, and they go to the district office and do some curriculum planning and things like that. But I think that our teachers are left to do with it what they want to. Like they're given a good bit of freedom. I know that the science standards for South Carolina have been redone recently, and like my 8th grade teachers at the first week that teachers went back had to go to the district office for a meeting and talk about planning and things like that. But I don't think they're locked into this is what you have to do, this is how you have to do it. I can tell that because we have 3 science teachers in 8th grade, and 2 of them are kind of doing the same thing, and then the 3rd one is doing something else. She's doing it a little bit differently. So I know our language arts people, there's a lot of we have coaches for that, and so they are involved a lot. But like our literacy coach meets with our language arts teachers, but she's there as a guide and a support. She's not there to boss them around and tell them this is how you're going to do everything. That's just, at least that's not how our school functions. Teachers have a lot of autonomy. So they're expected to be professionals and do their jobs and give the best quality to their students that they can. And I think that teachers use that well.
Okay. Well, I went off on a tangent, Shantae. I'm sorry. I was just curious about what you said. It intrigues me that, and there's pros and cons of how much the district lays out and expects everybody to be doing the same way.
And I brag on the district a lot when I hear my other friends' stories, because they hire people to do that job. So that's less off of the teachers and the PLC. And to me, I think it helps the district stay on one accord, because at least at some point, whomever is coming in your classroom, they'll know that you should be teaching standard blah, blah, blah at this time. And it may not look the same in everybody's classroom, but it is the same. And according to the countywide, pacing and curriculum guide, it's overwhelmingly with so many resources. And I think that might have been a complaint, that we have too many resources that we don't know what to choose from. So sometimes too much can be, too much.
Yeah.
All right. So when it comes to curriculum alignment, is what is being taught is what is to be measured. That is so true. And it doesn't always work like that. So, and it's an important part of the curriculum organization. And once the state has chosen the curriculum, and in my experience, my county has worked really hard to make sure that the standards are aligned to what is being taught. Each year, they do revisit the curriculum and what it includes, like the pacing, the relevance of the materials, the activities, and make sure that it aligns with the standards. So this ensures that what is being taught and used is closely aligned, and possibly, really as much as they can, try to align it to what the students are being assessed on. Okay, so curriculum flexibility, which we really don't have much of it, as much as we like to see more of this, depending on where you teach It's important for schools to give adequate attention to individual differences to different schools within the county. And that was from my experience of being at a low performing school. My complaint would be that, and I know it sounds negative to say, oh, our kids here at this area of my county cannot do what the county is asking them to do. So they're wanting them to come in school with this prior knowledge of a lot of things that they don't have, but we're still being held to the same standards as the entire county. So with it being so many resources and choices, many districts choose to go with a one fits all, which is easier and convenient, of course, and it creates division within the county. So coming from that low performance school, and my principal goes to these principal meetings and they're chewing her out like, you know, what happened? Why you don't have this? What's going on with your school? And we're working as hard as we can. And we're being held against, you know, the top tier schools on the other side of town. So, and this is seen primarily in low performing schools. And if these individual needs are recognized, then it would improve, I think, student learning experience, and it would motivate students. However, guess what? The students don't know because they don't hear that part. So they don't really know. Curriculum continuity and curriculum balance. So students and teachers have limited say so. Educators differentiate instruction based off of 504s and IEPs, but more than all of the time, us educators really have been following and delivering a very basic curriculum because it's for everyone. It's a one fits all, and it allows little variation. So they really do tell us what to do, and they give us the things we need to do it. And it's very traditional, of course, and it's basic. It's not enough time in a day, and we all still complain about that, especially with the state regulations and rules and all of the things that they want us to do to allow like freedom with the curriculum. And time is still very sensitive within schools. All right, so I have 3 case studies. Do you guys want me to read them, or can I not insult their intelligence and allow them to read them and give them a time and ask them a question? Or
I think it would be great if they just want to read it. They're very short, so it doesn't take but just a minute to read it, and then you can lead the discussion.
Okay, so you want them to?
Yeah, just let them read it.
Okay. All right, guys. In your textbook on page 364 is case number 7, and it's titled, "Which textbook will it be?" All right, so my question to you guys is, should our personal opinions reflect the curriculum? Based off of, well, period anyway, but especially in relation to this case study. Should our personal opinions reflect the curriculum or what we should deliver as classroom teachers in the classroom?
I think the first thing you need to look at is what standards are you trying to teach before you really look at curriculum. And so that kind of keeps some of your personal opinions perhaps out of it by default, because you're focusing on a standard instead of what you want to teach.
Mm-hmm. I think for me personally, just in reading where it says that she's unhappy with the more conservative posture of many of her colleagues and has indicated that unless a more positive stand on multicultural nature of societies being taken by the apartment should go somewhere else. So just like you said, focusing on the standards and what the kids should know and what the end goal is, the objectives, and keep it there, it'll prevent our personal stance to be out of the situation.
All right, so what do you think of this? I'm intrigued by the last line of the first paragraph. The board requires one adopted text series, but does permit supplemental works when it can be shown that there is good reason to do so. Does that mean that as a principal, that if Ms. Jones comes and says, I would like to supplement the text with these pieces of literature or whatever, that again, the principal's got some responsibility, but that should be permitted. If it can fit the curriculum, that there ought to be flexibility that teachers can supplement the adopted text.
But I think, like you said, the most important part in that statement was they do allow supplemental works when it can be shown that there's good reason to do so.
All right, so what's going to happen when Ms. Jones has supplemental text and Mr. Smith doesn't?
Maybe they should definitely decide that as a PLC, so, because, yeah.
Does anybody work in a district that permits that?
I know when we just recently adopted a new math program, there was a lot of input from teachers, but there was also a template, and they had to complete the template when they were giving their feedback. And, part of the template was, why, what was their reasoning behind their decision. And, a lot of it had to be based on, of course, standards and other things. Social studies can be a bit more touchy-feely than math. I don't understand why the teacher who doesn't use a textbook, I understand her, what she feels strongly about, but I don't understand why she is anti-textbook altogether if she's not going to be using the textbook.
Well, it says she does not like the conservative approach.
So, but they have an opportunity to pick another textbook.
Well, I think that's why this is a case study.
So I think that they have to, I don't know. I feel like I'm talking too much. I feel like they need to sit down and decide, have a template and decide what's important to them and see what checks off the most boxes. They all need to decide on what criteria is important to them and come to a consensus on that.
All right, so for all of you, and we'll move on here, but this is, I think, one of those things that can come back and bite you as a principal, because the parent's going to come to you. They're not going to go to anybody else. If the board allows supplemental material, will you allow supplemental material? If it fits the curriculum, will you allow supplemental material? if a textbook has been adopted for the grade span or the grade level or the subject area or whatever, will you allow supplemental material? That Ms. Jones can use it and Mr. Smith has the right not to.
I think you would have to have a process for reviewing supplemental material. Social studies in and of itself is often very political. And as the teacher choices and preferences state, everybody has a different opinion. And conservative and liberal can get you on either end, can get you in a world of trouble with parent perception. So it's important, if you make that decision to allow supplemental, that there still has to be criteria. There has to be boundaries. And that's going to take place a lot within the confines of wherever your district's located and what your population is most open to. Sounds bad, but it's also a reality.
Yeah, but you could go back to the math teacher who doesn't like math 1, 2, 3 and wants to go back to the old whatever, algebra 1, geometry, algebra 2 textbooks.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. There has to be boundaries and criteria for what that supplemental material might include, or some kind of review process with the principal, if the principal's going to allow it. And then, are there criteria for allowing supplemental materials from the board?
Well, in this case, there was.
When it's shown that there can be good reason, but are there criteria, or is that judgment call?
So to add to this conversation, a lot of times our core textbook would be the textbook that they're picking. That core textbook might be how they deliver that grade level standard, but then the supplemental pieces are used for small group to fill in those gaps for that standard that students didn't get. That's why that's to supplement the core piece. So I think you would have to agree on your core text. This is why we're going to deliver that standard, but then we can use supplemental pieces to fill in those holes where the student didn't get that standard, which is your small groups.
All right, so I think that again, the key here, and y'all touched on this, is the strength of the PLC is this very thing. We are going to discuss how we're going to deliver and what materials we're going to use to deliver, and we're going to be consistent with it. And the principal's got to be the leader in that initiative, in my opinion. And I agree with the criteria and everything else. But I also think that if Ms. Jones convinces me that her supplemental material will benefit the children in her classroom, that we've got to figure out, okay, we're going to let her go rogue with the rest of the teachers not doing it, knowing that when parents hear that she's got supplemental material that may be benefiting those children, why isn't everybody doing it? So it's going to be, it's a bigger thing, and the principal's going to have to really keep the thumb on it. And I think that's where this case study was coming from. Dale, what do you think?
I think that's a good idea. You need a core text and then supplemental. But I think, Steve, to your point, I was just thinking when I was an elementary principal, I had 2 teachers who came and said, we want to do this. This is extra besides the standard curriculum. And I said, you can, as long as you take the 3rd teacher with you. Because I'm not going to get beat, about the head and neck and shoulders by parents who said, these 2 rooms are getting all this wonderful stuff, and this 3rd room over here is not getting any. And so that was the deal that I cut with them is Joyce and Linda could do it, but they had to take Amy with them. I think that's the solution is if you can convince me that this is something good, then it should be good for all the kids in that grade level. Where you get in trouble is when you deviate, when one group gets something that the other doesn't get, or that therein, is when the complaints start flooding in. So I think that's a great idea.
All right, Shantae, let's do 16.
All right, it is on page 369, and it is called We Object. I'll give you guys time to read it. It's 4 paragraphs.
Okay, Shantae, I like your question.
What is the best way to handle this situation? For me, I'm as Grace, Michael, and my husband John writing that note. When I come from a parent's perspective, I could understand their feelings. I've received notes with my kindergarten students about celebrating certain holidays or having parties and respecting their children's beliefs. And I would forward the message to my principal. And at the time, it was best that we, with the parent permission, and they were definitely cool with it, we will remove the student from the classroom during that time and place them in another teacher's class. And since we had the same schedule, they weren't missing anything. So academic wise, when they were removed, the student did understand why they were moved at that time. However, as a principal, I feel like I should respect their beliefs or whatever they feel. And that's not even an argument. Oh, it's not an argument to have. Like, they feel that way. And to me, I feel like we'll be going back and forth as, a principal and a parent. Take the girl out of the class and be done with it.
Yes, and I would speak to the teacher too, to see if there's like alternate assignments, because is it a high school, or did it tell us if it was a high school or middle school?
It's a high school.
Okay, yeah, so that's like, the graduation requirement. So just because there's children that are homebound, and those kids get instruction too. Like all kids don't have to arrive at the school, even in the PE class, to get credit. So just, seeing what, but the question is, I guess the question I have is like, are we allowed to give, well, I don't know what it, well, I guess this is religious purposes, but yes, I would give the child alternate assignment. Hopefully that will work.
I know when I was in 6th grade, we had sex education and a day where we like watched these movies about childbirth, and they separated the girls and the boys and put us in 2 different rooms, and we watched something and had somebody come in and talk to us. And this was 6th grade. However, a paper was sent home for parental consent. So maybe when they are explaining, when they're signing up for these classes, that when it comes to health, that some type of disclaimer or parent permission should be given before someone can sign up for this.
And also maybe a copy of the curriculum, you know, so to be transparent about what the curriculum actually requires them to teach.
Did anybody make them stay in the class? It is in the curriculum.
I would check first to see if there's any kind of board policy or something that's across the board for all schools. What's the county's stance or the district's stance? Because it's values based.
I would suggest, to Helena's point, is the teacher covering the curriculum as stated? If this is the county adopted curriculum, we can't change that. And if this is a required course for graduation in high school, we can't change that. So I don't, you know, those are the two questions you have to ask. Now, if this teacher has kind of gone out on her own or his own and has departed from the curriculum, that's a whole nother story. But if the teacher is delivering the curriculum as intended, and this is a required course for graduation, can you be taking that student out of the class?
I think according to the case study where it says the parents has values and beliefs, and so we can't make students get immunizations if they have religious beliefs, and so they're exempt from that, and we can't do anything for to them. So if
but this is not an immunization, this is course content. That's a different deal. So if we have a stated curriculum for a required course for graduation, anybody know what happens to high school principals if kids don't get the right courses for graduation? You used to be a high school principal. Because then those kids have to come back to summer school, or your district has to put a plan in place to fix that. The latest one that I remember is the valedictorian at Garinger in Charlotte that didn't have the proper credits for graduation. You don't mess with Carnegie units for graduation. You don't have the authority to waive those requirements. So you got to be careful.
Religious beliefs don't uphold in that regard, because students are also exempt from being at school with certain religious beliefs if they're out on their religious holidays. Like, so how does
that's again, it's not the same thing. That's still, again, not the same thing.
Okay.
So the question becomes is the teacher delivering the curriculum as intended? And is this a required course? If this is an elective course, this is an easy one. We just move her to another elective, not a problem. But if it's a required state course, what are we going to do? We cannot waive this for her. If it's a required course for graduation, we can't waive this course. Now, what we could do is have the child petition the Board of Education for a course substitution. But again, you're going to get into credits there as well, and I'm not sure the board would entertain that because they've set this curriculum. I mean, public school is not for everybody.
If it's because they're having a disagreement or don't see like eye to eye with the instructor, could they not remove that student from that course now?
That's what I'm saying is they could put her in another section. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. If this person is covering the content of the curriculum as intended, I mean, you could move them to another section, but these parents don't want this at all. They don't want this curriculum. And if we're sure that this is the actual approved curricula for this course, then we don't have a lot of options, and we can't just wave a magic wand and waive state required courses for graduation. We got to be real careful about that as high school principals. You get in real big trouble doing things like that.
Yeah. So part of this is do you just remove the student during that section of the health class? Because, you know, all of the health class doesn't talk about sex education or alcohol. So, you know, you have that part. You also deal with it, obviously, in biology with evolution and creationism. And there's just, you know, and then you read now politically, they're finding all kinds of ways to tie other curricula to political ends. And so we you know, this is an appropriate case study for what we are battling now in America, where there's something wrong with everything we teach. I think, as you know, from my perspective, you know, the health curriculum, health is in the ninth grade a required class, as we all know. You know, can you figure out an alternative assignment during sex education? I would think probably so, but they're going to have to get credit for health, and so it's you know, it's burdensome, but it's a reality, and you know, I think we've all dealt with it, particularly at the high school level. But I'm sure it's you know, it's worked its way, you know, into other grade levels. I kind of smiled, Shantae, when you said that in the sixth grade you saw childbirth and talked about how babies were made. When Dale was in school, it didn't happen till the ninth grade, so it happens a lot earlier. That these things are taught to young people, and I think that's something that we've, and that's not joking. I think that's right, Dale, isn't it? Wasn't it the ninth grade?
Absolutely.
It's ninth grade health.
They divided us up in health and PE for sex ed, for boys versus girls, and for driver's ed. They used to go together in ninth grade. Health ed and driver's ed, sex ed and driver's ed used to go together, so that you.
so the question is, Shantae,
there's a lot of good jokes there that I'm going to pass on.
Yeah. Question is, Shantae, did you also learn to drive in the sixth grade?
No, I did not, because I wasn't driving to go have sex. So no.
Well, that was not that. No, I did not imply that. I was just tying the two courses together.
No, those two courses were not. I actually did driver's ed in the 11th grade. And that was I think at the time it was an age requirement at the time. So it wasn't, I had to be 14 and a half to do driver's ed, just to start the first course of it.
But you know, it's an interest. We really don't talk about that much, but and obviously there's significant generational difference. But Dale and I were in school at the same time, and it was the ninth grade curriculum for sex education, and now that you know, it's much earlier, and it does, you know, it does lend credence to discussions among the powers that be of when should this be taught, and how America has kind of changed over you know, all of these years, and you know, and some parents struggle with that, and I am certain that in the 60s and 70s, parents were struggling with us hearing about it in the ninth grade. So, you know, it's an interesting thing. Shantae, you're just taking way too long. Do the last one real quick.
All righty. And just FYI, when I went to middle school, I asked them, did they still teach sex ed in sixth grade? And they said no. So I don't think that they're even talking about it anymore, which is weird, because we had like there, I'm seeing middle school kids have pregnancies in like the county, which is, yeah. So, yeah. All right, case study number 18, write your legislators. That's on page 370. All right, so I initially laughed after reading the first paragraph when I first read the case study, because I wanted to know what standard did that cover to actually write a highly charged letter to an identified legislator. I know in third grade when we talk about the government and the branches of the government, and to discuss the people who made certain rules and laws and things like that, it was like informational for them to know who these people are, what their jobs are. And in those conversations, the students would ask like, well, did this person, does the mayor decide if seatbelts could be worn or something like that? Because this is where we first start talking about laws. And so this is middle school, and for him or her to have the students talk about things that it seems like the teacher was kind of like was kind of housed on, like the cuts, the budget, the school financing. Like the kids don't know anything about that, and I don't think they care about reduced health care benefits and state aid for teacher salaries. I feel like that was so personal. But it seems to be a struggle because they keep saying about his career is so great and he's the best, teacher of the year or best teacher award. But I do agree with the board saying that he should be dismissed for unprofessional conduct because that was very personal. And I probably wouldn't like that as a mom with my kid in that teacher's class, putting his personal or her personal views on the students. Because what does that have
so to you would fire the teacher?
I wouldn't fire. Well, wait a minute.
Well, that's what dismiss means.
Well, yes, that is true. I would go to the code of conduct. And if that's what the code of conduct says, that what happens after that offense, then I have to follow the rules.
All right. How many of you would fire the teacher?
I can't see the hands. How many people?
I can't either. Are there others that would fire the teacher for that?
I think I would want to investigate a little bit more than just assume that everybody else is right and find out exactly what happened before I did anything.
Okay, what if you find out it did happen?
I would want to go back to the school board and discuss it. I wouldn't want to make that decision just willy-nilly. Just say, yeah, you're gone. Because
all right. So first of all,
bite you in the butt.
First of all, can the principal fire the teacher?
Well, I don't
depends
really
on what the principal
get fired. Doesn't it have to be like a lengthy protocol, like for somebody to get fired anyway?
Yeah. So does the principal have the authority to fire the teacher?
I don't think so. I mean, I would assume not.
We'd have to identify exactly what the teacher did that was out of bounds, specifically what code of conduct was broken or code of ethics or board policy, something along those lines. But as a principal, my investigation would be talking to the teacher, not just, did you do this? Tell me what your purpose was and how you went about it. Let's talk about what could students have done rather than you telling them and guiding them down a specific pathway. What would have been something they could have researched in order to write the letter? So more of a coaching, counseling, talking about it with the teacher to find out what the intent was. And maybe the teacher is very angry. And so it was a way to get around, finding out more of what intent there was. Was there, or was it really not meant to be malicious? And is it a coachable moment? And working with human resources.
Within that coachable moment, would you ask initially as a principal to say, hey, can you show me in your social studies standards where you found that this assignment was okay to use to cover this standard?
that's where I would ask what the intent was. What are you teaching? How are you teaching it? And is there a better way?
Yes.
What was the purpose, the learning target?
Yes. Now, if it's argumentative writing, though, because I'm over here Googling, I need to keep researching, but, we have argumentative writing standards there's argumentative writing standards all up and down the English curriculum. And I think I'm getting some argumentative writing and social studies.
But he wasn't grading it. He didn't read it to grade it. So that wasn't his purpose. That wasn't his intent.
I think what was the issue is the fact that he had them mailed.
Right.
That were not like stay put, let the children have that opportunity to write argumentatively and to get their voices heard. But he just sent them out willy-nilly and didn't even care what they said or how they said it. And I think that was more of the issue, that they were mailed to these individuals.
But they're like, these people are public figures. In a way, you would think they'd be happy to hear from children, because
I don't think they're happy to hear this.
But they're I don't know.
So one of the things that you got to remember, if we're going to get through tonight, we're going to go on. This is a great case study, and you can almost picture it happening from time to time with frustrated teachers who would like to see something improve in their workplace environment, whether it's pay or benefits or materials or whatever. And so we understand that. I agree with you, Jessica, that argumentative writing is part of the curriculum, and certainly we could also defend that we teach, the role of the legislature, the role of local government, the role of all of these people in funding schools and everything else. The issue, I think, again, and Mandy touched on this, I believe it was Mandy, is it was an ungraded exercise. And the other thing that we know is that those kids don't know about, nor do they care about the arguments that they were making. They had to be coached on what to say. And so it is, if I'm a parent, I'm upset that my child was writing like that because it may or may not. What if I'm a parent who doesn't want to pay any more taxes? Which we're going to pay more taxes if we're going to get all of these things taken care of. So it is one of those things that this teacher royally messed up, and I think that there are a variety of actions that can be taken against the teacher. The question is it a fireable offense? This teacher with impeccable history of employment, is it a fireable offense? Because the legislature, the legislators probably want the teacher fired.
Mm-hmm.
Now the school board wants the teacher fired. Of course,
it says that the legislator is actually the one who is less bothered, is just curious, in his words, asking about what is being taught in social studies these days.
Yeah. Well, that probably was, kind of a rhetorical thing.
I think great teachers make bad decisions, and that might have been simply a poor choice, but people make bad decisions every day and they get in trouble by the law. So whatever the book of rules for everything that they're going to look through, and if it violates that, that's just a consequence of a bad choice.
Okay, so first of all, the principal can make a recommendation, but the principal cannot fire the teacher. So at least in the state of North Carolina and South Carolina. the superintendent will end up being involved in this. The superintendent's getting pressure from the board, obviously. It may or may not come to that. It'll be one of those closed session discussions. And, you know, I don't have an answer to it. I think that teacher's going to have to do some serious digging to get out of this mess. But I'm not sure that I would fire the teacher for it, but oh, I'd be mad. And the other thing that this is coming from, you got to remember that a lot of times the Board of Education has taxation authority. So it's putting them on the spot to up property taxes to pay for these things. And so that's not the case in North Carolina, but it is the case in many states that the board is the one who would raise taxes to pay for the benefits. So that's part of why I think the board is so upset too. Dale, what do you think?
At the end of this month, on the 26th and 27th of September, hopefully I will be in Raleigh at McKimmon Center for the school law update. And one of the hot topics this year is case law pertaining to free and protected speech of teachers. And the pre-conference notes, what I'm reading is, in order to be able to fire this teacher, you'd have to have some language in your teacher contract that forbade this particular activity. I don't think you can fire this teacher unless you had enough forethought to already have that written in contracts. Obviously, that's not the case in most North Carolina districts. That's why they're going to cover this in case law later at the end of next month. And so, I mean, there has to be a fireable offense here. And I'm guessing there probably isn't, but they want to anyway. And so you could reprimand the teacher, but I don't think without some specific language about free and protected speech, I don't think you can fire this teacher. I think the teacher did a bad thing. You never use kids like this. This is not being. I mean, you have abused these children, and that's a no-no in our business. But I'm just not sure that without that in case law in your contracts that you could go as far. Now the board can do whatever they want, but now I'm not sure that they'd win in a federal case. I'm just not sure that they could win that without that language in the contract. Sometimes discretion is the better part of valor. You know, you're spending taxpayers' money on these lawsuits. You might have to live another day on this one. You could reprimand this teacher, but firing this teacher would that would be a high risk and expensive endeavor.
It'd be a stretch.
Yeah, would be.
All right, Shantae, thank you so much. We went a little bit over. You should be ashamed. And so I can't believe you talked that much. But anyway, LaCrista, good to you. There's a lot of pressure on you, LaCrista. A lot of pressure.
Oh,
you're
no.
gonna have to really go through this now.
Okay. Can y'all see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I had chapter 7 of the principal book for promoting student achievement. This is just the things that we are going to cover in this presentation. I'm not going to read it because I know we're crunched for time. So the first thing that we're going to look at is instruction and learning. So the emphasis on instruction, or when instructing, should be on student learning, not teaching. So these are some considerations to look at when you are thinking about instruction. The text gives these in question form, but here I just made them in simple statements. So you need to consider the nature of the learner, the measurement of learning, the organization of students, the instructional processes available, students' individual differences, the implications of instructional process on
organizational components, and the improvement of the processes. The next thing is the individual differences among children. So this focuses on the diversity. So these are some differences that were given in the text. As an educator, I know that this is just like a very short list of differences that exist between students, but these differences are important when we are determining the instructional ways or processes, the methods, the techniques that we are going to use to teach students. So the exploration of differences help to determine the conditions set to identify the future opportunities needed and to determine the instruction and curriculum organization. The next thing is about the school accountability and student achievement. In order for educators to maximize student learning and be accountable, excellence is needed in the school leadership along with effective use of tools. So there was two tests that were looked at or talked about in the text. It was a norm reference test and the criterion reference test. So the norm reference tests are just our standardized tests. They compare the individual student or a group of students at a school, at several schools or within a district to a norm that is usually like a national norm. It doesn't necessarily mean that we are assessing what students know, but we are just simply comparing the students' ability or their mastery of the content being taught. And then the criterion reference test is all about the content. It looks at the curriculum standards, the set of criteria, the skills that students should acquire during teaching, and it is for data-driven decision-making. So all those differences that were listed in the text talking about the differences amongst the students, those differences are important when we are looking at these tests and looking at the data, breaking it down. The No Child Left Behind Act, it had the data broken up in poverty, race, ethnicity, disability, and English proficiency. So the next topic was grouping students in the text. The purpose of grouping students is to bring out the highest quantity and quality of instruction that is possible. So there were two factors. With grouping. It's the variation in student abilities, which talks about the differences between students. The second is the cost of organizational design compared to effectiveness. This factor explores teacher to student ratios within an organization, and it also compares that ratio with the financial ability of the organization. There were three variables: size, composition, and flexibility. The text discussed research that concluded if a class size is smaller than 20, teachers are better able to individualize instruction, provide more in-depth content knowledge. There was also an increase in student engagement with a smaller class size, and that is lower than 20. Between 20 to 40, it didn't show much difference in the data. The second one, which deals with composition for ability grouping in elementary, middle, and high school. For elementary and middle school, the research showed that ability grouping is not good for long periods of time, but should be done within the classroom by the teacher. And for high school, it says that the ability grouping kind of occurs naturally because of the electives and the advanced or the AP courses that the school offers. Flexibility of a group. This goes back to how long should students be grouped? How often should you regroup them? And the authors shared that groups should remain intact until the goal is accomplished. So they share that the time frame can be varied. It could be like an hour if you're like in a classroom, or it could be 3 years if we're looking at moving kids up through grade levels. So there was a lot of research that was provided on teaching, and it kind of went in depth in the book. So when it came to the teaching competencies, they listed that these were important skill sets that teachers needed to know when developing instruction. So the planning skills, the lesson implementation, student motivation was important. The feedback that was given to students has to be effective. It has to be frequent and has to be given to them in a timely manner. The evaluation activities, and it talks about telling students how they're going to be evaluated. So there's no surprise on what evaluation activities they're going to do, whether it be a test or a presentation or a or any other form of assignment. They need to know how they're going to be evaluated. Then it also talks about report cards and graded assignments. There were 3 criteria presented, and they said that most of the time, most effective teachers use those 3 criteria in combination. Then it talks about time management within the classroom. I know I have like an 80-minute block, so I say we work from bell to bell. From the time we enter, we are moving quickly so that we can get as much instruction in as possible. And then it talks about differentiating instruction and using those differences among students to meet their various needs. So the case studies. I have it pictured. If you can read it well, you can read it, and then we will talk about it.
Okay, everybody, you got this was a different way to lay out the case. It's just like a bullet point down the line. So we have a school that there is now concern that students are not performing well on the SAT. So and you know, thankfully, many universities are not looking just at SAT scores anymore. In fact, they're putting far greater priority in participation in these extracurricular things. What else do you do? The whole being of the young person. Still, SAT makes a difference, and the foundational courses that you're going to have as you transition to college are important. It says that the principal has a good bit of flexibility with how the budget is developed and what resources are given to teachers. So what do? You're not going to get an increase. You know, that's what I love. I always appreciated that as a superintendent is the principal would always say, I need this. And which is true. I mean, I think that's great that you go to bat for your folk. And I just kind of want to sit there and say, well, you think money grows on trees? Where are we going to pay for this? Because it's always, I want more, but I'm not willing to give up this. And so what do you do as a principal? How do you address this? Krista, this is your case study. Let's get you first. How are you going to address this situation?
So looking at it just from like experience and talking to other teachers, like the number 3 where it says many of your science teachers did not major in science, it is their second teaching field. I don't think that is a big concern. I mean, I know that it says that the enrollment is dropping in advanced science classes. However, I feel like reading is so important, and that may be the reason why the kids are backing out of science, because maybe they're not strong readers, and reading is going to impact their mathematical abilities as well as them doing well in science. So I've taught math and science before, and I know that I've done a lot of interdisciplinary lessons, and those lessons included heavily in the reading aspect of it, and then some mathematical aspects as a science teacher. And I know as a science teacher, I communicated with the ELA teachers to discuss like reading strategies and what I could do in my classroom to help my students with their science. So I feel like there should be maybe having those interdisciplinary PLCs to help those science teachers may be beneficial, and that's not going to cost money. That may cost time for after school, but it's not going to cost money. What
grade levels you teach science, LaCresta?
7th grade.
Okay, so I think this is more of a high school issue with this piece. So what about the biology teacher, the physics teacher, the chemistry teacher, the AP classes? What about those things? I mean, we're not gonna easily put a PLC together to help them teach that level of science, are we, or are we?
I mean, you got to have people that are willing and understand that we are going to collaborate to benefit the children. And I don't know how it works in high school. I've never been in a high school setting as a teacher, so I'm not sure how that would play out. I mean, I know some high school teachers, and I've communicated with them, but I mean, I don't know, honestly. And maybe there needs to be some funding towards the reading program or the ELA stuff, because they're struggling with SAT. And I know science is heavy on vocabulary. And if we're thinking about chemistry and physics, that has a lot of math to do with it. So there's a lot of things coming into play here.
All right. Other thoughts?
There's not enough information. There's no data.
No. Don't ever say that. No.
Yep.
Boo,
Well, I don't know what the breakdown of what the needs are on the SAT or in the academic areas to see what a focus.
I love curriculum people, but y'all are too down in the weeds. What is the school improvement team? What is that?
Yeah, but they need data.
But what is the school improvement team? Who are the school improvement team?
You go to them to help, or hopefully you do.
What do they produce by law every year? What does the school improvement team have to produce every year?
School improvement
plan. That is correct. So we start with our school improvement plan. And then that's where we go. And our budget and our master schedule After we've done PLCs come first, then our professional growth plan, then we do our budget and our master schedule, and they have to support what? What's that triangle? That the budget and the master schedule have to support the school improvement plan. Y'all are down in the weeds about this stuff, but you've got plenty of information here. The answer here is what has your school improvement team identified as what you need to be working on? And that's what you put your money and your efforts in behind that. You can't be the Lone Ranger on this one, because your school improvement team has what on it? Teachers? Yes or no? Yep. Administrator? What about parents? What about community members? What about student and secondary? See, you've got this group. Now, I'm not talking about you can hide behind them, but there's power in that, where our school improvement team says this is what we need to do. And this is the direction that we're going. And that gives you a platform to do what you need to do. But you're right. We start with PLCs, then we do professional growth plan where we work on the ability of our faculty, but then we go straight into, we start building that master schedule that supports, all these are initiatives that support that school improvement plan. And so, again, the difference in what you folks do in terms of curriculum people, y'all are down in the weeds. Administrators have to be a much more global view of the problem. You got plenty of data here for the problem from the administrative level. Now, if you were setting up those PLCs and you were the curriculum facilitator for this group, you wouldn't have enough. But for a principal, you got plenty. Principals don't know near as much as y'all do, but we don't need to. We have a different perspective.
All right, so let's look at a couple things. One is we know that our demographics are changing and our budget is not. So I think to address what Dale is saying, granted we're struggling with SAT, and granted we're struggling with science. We know we're not going to be able to find science teachers. So from that perspective, LaCrystal, you hit an absolute home run. We're not gonna go out and get a physics teacher, probably, at least one who majored in it, or a chemistry teacher. So we've got to figure out other means to meet the needs of the young people, and that can be done virtually. That can be done with teachers who have some acumen for it, but maybe didn't major in it. We're going to support, and I agree that the reading skills and the math skills will come into play. It is incumbent, and I guess where I'm coming from, at least from my experience, and Dale talks about the school improvement team being the driver of this. Still, the majority of your school improvement team is they too have a limited perspective. So the principal, and when we get to the end of the semester, you're going to see Bishop Jakes talk about this. The principal is going to have to drive this train a little bit. And this goes back to what we talked about. I brought it up to my EDLS 730 class this weekend of our discussion of mission and vision, trying to figure out, which one is which, and the majority are certainly in keeping with what a mission is and what a vision is, but there's still alternative views of what a mission is and what a vision is. But regardless of our definition of it, one of them is what we're about, and the other is how we're going to get there. And we have got to figure this out of what is the identity of our school? What do we want to be known for? What do we want our students to leave with? And if we can get all this and work together with it, then I think we can get there. And the one thing that as Dale was talking here, we've got to remember, it is fine for teachers to come to the principal and say, I want more. And it is fine for the principal to come to the superintendent and say, I want more. look at that line. There's not going to be any more. So what are you willing to give up to get more? And that is the challenge that the principal has. That is the challenge that the superintendent has. But almost more than anybody, it's the challenge that the school improvement team has. Because we have got to set what we are about and budget accordingly. And if this is the priority, if the priority is to get science performance up so SAT scores go up, then they're going to have to make the decision. We're going to spend less on these programs so that we can enhance these programs. That's what this case is. And so
got to make some decisions.
Yeah, and it's
can't
not
pay
easy
for everything.
Yeah, it's not easy. And the weak principals go and say the superintendent's not going to give us any more money. That's the weak principal. The strong principal says we're going to figure this out. And that's where we do it, because the superintendent will give you more money if the superintendent had more money. If you can justify the need for it, any superintendent would do that. It's not going to be there. That's one of these facts right here. All right, what's the next one, Kristen?
It is case 26.
All right, we're going to do this one in 5 minutes. Okay, LaCrystal, what are you going to do about this very bad situation?
So I think it's important with this situation where the counselor has to know the population of students that they are working with. And I'm curious to know how the counselor is, like, is the counselor African American? Are they do they have this? Are they Latino? Like, I would want to know that about the counselor, because I feel like that does play a part in how you interact with them. And so I think that this counselor has to be a conversation about how you speak to the children in general, but also knowing the student that you're counseling, because some kids may respond well to, they could say whatever the counselor said to this kid and still be like, oh, I'm going to prove them wrong. Where this child didn't take it that way. It actually had the opposite effect, where they're not motivated anymore. So there has to be some apologizing.
Are you saying, LaCrystal, that the counselor could have been justified saying that to that child if it was a counselor who was the same race, ethnicity, gender?
No, I'm saying you have a more understanding of how to communicate when you are the same race or have the same background or similarities as kids. But I'm also saying that it's a lot of things that go into play, where some kids are more responsive to things that are said than other kids. You have to know the kid that you're counseling, because if this person doesn't have a lot of interaction with this kid, they have to be cautious of how they say things and what they say. And if you have a relationship with the kid, I approach every kid differently, because when I'm getting to know my children, it's the same approach with them, where I'm very gentle. I kind of like trying to learn them, trying to understand where they're coming from, trying to learn their personality, all of those things, where when I get to know them, my approach to them is going to be very different, because we have built a relationship and I know them. So I don't know if this counselor knows this kid, or if this kid is just coming to this counselor's office just to talk to them about their grades, and the counselor has responded this way. Because now it's like, regardless of how that counselor felt, it wasn't right for them to say that to the kid because it just wasn't right. So, I mean, it has to be a conversation. That counselor does need to apologize to that kid and to those parents about what was said, and they need to have some training on how to deliver information.
All right. Who else has got a thought?
I agree with her about certain people can identify with an example. A lot of the African American students at my previous school would talk to me, and I had a different relationship. I could talk to their parents kind of casual or just like a cultural thing that some of my white counterparts would say, I can't believe they let you say that. And it was like an understanding of a culture. However, I don't think that race, like I kind of thought as I was reading the letter that the population has nothing to do with somebody telling somebody to give up their interest in going to college. I feel like the population, this percent of this or whatever the race, that's irrelevant. The counselor said the kid needs to give up on their dreams of going to college instead of providing them with another route to say, hey, maybe we should look into this to raise your GPA to go to college. I don't think that the race is relevant.
When I was talking about the race, I was talking about the casual, not necessarily the giving up part, because that was very harsh and that shouldn't have been said. But as far as like the casual conversation between what was said. However, I do agree that there needed to be another route provided. I don't know if, because it doesn't give us that he didn't tell her another route. It just says that he said those things. So he could have given another route. We just are unaware of that because only thing that the child heard was the give up part. So,
right. When I was referring to the race, I was talking about the first paragraph, like them giving us the demographics of the school. I just felt like going into the letter that had nothing to do with the counselor saying that they need to give up on college.
All right. So this will happen from time to time. And LaCresta, I guess my cynical statement would be, if we have to train counselors on how to talk to kids, we're in real trouble. So because that it seems to me would be one of the foundational pieces they should know. But we have a situation where I can't tell y'all. So every semester that I do 7:30, we start with Senec's book, Start With Why. And all of you are familiar with the book, I imagine, and several of you have used it in your coursework or in a book study at your school. And this Start With Why. So I have my students, so I can get to know them, to tell me their why. So they write their why. And it is inevitable that I will have at least one who had a counselor to say, you can't do something. And I just wanted to prove them wrong. So that's exactly what y'all are talking about, that sometimes this reverse psychology comes into play. Bottom line is, reverse psychology is a great thing. This counselor really messed up. And you know, the parents ought to be upset about it, and the counselor's going to have to make amends. And it probably, again, it's kind of like the legislature letter. You know, you're probably not going to fire them for it, but they better figure it out. That you don't tell somebody they're not going to be college eligible. You sit down and go the other way of, here's what you're going to need to do to go to college. And so that's how it's handled. But anyway, a good case. Krista, thank you for being brief, and we're back on track on most of the time. So thanks very much for that. Now let's shift to Annie. I believe she is wrapping us up here.
It's actually me. Annie and I switched.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Gosh, you only told me that 10 times.
That's okay.
Sorry, Stephanie.
Okay. Let's see if I can figure out which one of these. Okay. Am I able to share the screen?
Yes.
Okay. I need to get back to Zoom to do that. Okay. Okay, so I had chapter 9, and it was human resources development. I'm gonna put y'all, minimize y'all. The objectives for this presentation are to discuss the integration of the individual and the organization. So there was a lot of organizational theory in the context of the evolution of the individual within the organization. Explore various teacher differences that impact professional development, to investigate the nature of professional development and the delivery models of professional development, and examine the relationship between school improvement and professional development. The standards were professional standards for educational leaders 4, 6, and 7. The integration of the individual and the organization. Again, that was the basis, the framework of everything. I'm not going to read everything to you because I know we're on a time limit, but basically you can read the slides as I'm going through. You have these 3, the timeline of an individual in an organization is, of course, entry, and then aspects of socialization, and then you finally have arrived at mutual acceptance in the, oops, sorry, I mean to do that, we'll go back. And then there's this what next, like, you know, how do you continue to grow? And that's what this chapter was about. So there are 3 different theoretical bases for looking at growing and professional development. And one of them is this, it's looking at these 2 ranges, the institution, the institutional based career planning and individual based career planning, and they are the 2 extremes, and there's a whole lot of in between. Institutional is our traditional way of looking at professional growth, and that is you are judged by yourself and others. You're measuring your abilities against other people. There's a hierarchy. Teacher is viewed as secondary to administration. It's externally imposed. These traditions are externally imposed. And then there's the individual. Over the other side is encourages teachers to seek development opportunities for their own sake, for their own personal growth. The characteristics are it's intrinsically motivational. Principals recognize the potential and are on board with building their organization, and it builds levels of capacity. So individuals, it's not just, you don't have your top, it's not all top down. And for those of us who've been in this 20 plus years, I mean, there was just some funny, I laughed a lot reading this chapter. So this is another way of looking at the individual within the organization. And I've put the research basis on these slides at the bottom or somewhere on the slide. So I'm not going to read all this to you. 1 to 3 years is survival and discovery. 4 to 6 years, stabilization. 7 to 8, experimentation and activism. Being comfort, to get to step out and have a voice. 19 to 30 years, serenity and relational distance and conservatism. A shift to a more mechanical responses, less energy and enthusiasm. And then 30 to 40 years, disengagement. So I thought that this one was very I thought it was I thought it was just very, I don't know, it was kind of stereotyping. It's kind of putting people in their careers into stereotypes based on years. This one is based not solely on age or years, but just on a readiness level. And so this is another way of looking at career. This is another basis of looking at career development. Provisional and then developmental, and you can read those yourself, and they're decelerating. But again, this is not based on this strict progression as the one before it was. So what does that mean for teaching, and what part does staff development play in the career of a teacher? These are the things that you want. You want it to be results driven. You want it to be, in other words, how it affects instructional behaviors, how it affects the organization, and leaders and learners are actively involved in their own learning. So these are different models, and we have all, we're all we're master teachers, master educators. And so we've all experienced some version of these models of staff development. Maybe I'm speaking about that, but there may be some, we've all had a lot of this one, a lot of training, the traditional model. And then probably this inquiry is one that that PLCs kind of move towards. It can be individual or collaborative, where you're actually wanting to investigate something. You have a genuine question within your school. This is personal development. Personal involvement in your curriculum. This one is when you are doing a version of peer coaching, and this one is, of course, you're like us. We're all on our own path of personal growth. So one of the things that the chapter went to look on is your personal evaluation and supervision. So how supervision and evaluation builds your human resources on top of your professional development. I thought this was interesting. The difference between merit and worth. Merit is measuring effectiveness of one's performance within a given setting, and worth is how valuable that individual is to the rest of the organization. What purpose does evaluation serve for improvement? Just like teaching, there are the words formative and summative describe, the two ranges of purpose. Formative is basically concerned with making decisions based on providing a basis for decisions that can be justified. And summative is concerned primarily with professional growth and development. So if you think of the classroom, you think of, oops, I keep hitting this. A formative is the same. It's you're comparing a range of effectiveness, and summative, you are concerned mostly with individual growth. They mentioned all of these things, and I put them in a category of formative and summative. Clinical supervision can be a version of both, depending on how your principals treat it or how your administrators treat it. And then the last thing is, what are the implications of having a well-developed, highly motivated staff? That's your end goal, is that you need, you want to, and one of the things that I didn't say enough that the chapter really stressed was differentiating for adults. They didn't call it differentiating for adults, but knowing those levels of the reason for the theoretical basis is knowing where your staff is and what their needs are. Set high performance standards as a staff. Human resources development requires careful planning. They talked a lot about follow-up and follow-up, being able to follow up for transferring it into instruction, and then positive reinforcement. And I associated that with adult learners, and providing choice and making sure things are relevant for them. So I had case 4. You are the new principal at Scott Leary Middle School. The school has had 3 different principals in the last 5 years. It is August the 1st, and school will be opening soon. And you have the following facts at hand. Case 4 is on page 362. I'm going to ask you to read it on your own, please.
All right. You're brand new. You go into this school, you got not all the facts, you got a good many facts about what you are inheriting. So Stephanie has the question there. What are your first steps at the beginning of the school year as the school's new principal? Stephanie, what do you think?
I think I would gather up a lot of this data that's listed in this, and then other get other relevant data about student progress or school performance, and I would take it to the school improvement. That I would start with the summer school improvement team meeting, and I would just let the data speak for itself and develop conversations around that. And I mean, including the data that had 3 different principals in the last 5 years, because I'm sure that's affected the staff. And I'd like a lot of input. And I would ask questions from there.
I agree.
So I would, sorry.
You're fine. I was saying I agree with you. Finding who are the decision makers as a new principal will go a far way, because who are making those calls? Who are those strong leaders from the community that still impact the schools? Who are those teachers that are still there, that are still creating those impacts, will help to make a strong team for that SIP team that you're talking about. So I was just agreeing with you.
Elaine, I want to give you great credit. Now, you said a profound thing, those teachers that are still there. I'm betting, and most of us would agree, that if you've had 3 principals in 5 years, you've lost a good many teachers as well. So it is one of those things that you got to kind of see what you have when you get there. What else would you do?
You talking to me or everybody now?
Well, everybody, but Stephanie, you can lead the way. Is it good or bad that the latest principal didn't leave any plans for the 3-day workshop?
I think even if they had have left plans, the new principal could come in and do their own thing. I think it's actually a good, for me, I would want a clean slate like that.
Yeah, if Dale and I would have left you plans, you would just thrown them away with.
Yes.
Yeah, you'd have done your own thing, and that's the way it should be. Listen, folks, one of the things that we keep pounding is you need to believe in yourself, and you as all of you talked about it, we're collecting the data, we're knowing what we have, we know what we're facing. We're talking to the important people that are still there, and everybody's important, but the people who can give you some input or have input on what you need to do next. But it needs to be your plan shared with the leadership team, and then it becomes their plan, and then you start making these things happen. What else would you do? Y'all have a very active PTO. Is that important? How big a priority is it to get parents on board?
You said we do or don't have an active PTO?
Says it don't have an active PTO,
yeah.
Doesn't it?
Yeah. Yes, it doesn't. It does not. Yes.
They are the connection to the community, because usually, the PTO is run by members of the community. So, and based on what is here, the principal definitely needs the support of the community to reduce some of this turnover rate that is going on. And just to figure out from the community what is happening, what has been happening in the past, and then to be able to create that plan, that action plan with the team in order to move forward. So the PTO is essential. That needs to be established.
All right. Is that more important than the faculty? Is it more important than the 3-day workshop? Is it more important to get the community on board or the faculty on board?
I think here again, we're looking at sit team, community. You've got parents and community members on that to help with that part. So I don't think that's as important as getting faculty on board, which is mostly what your sit team is anyway. But that's what we keep going back to in like a lot of our conversations.
Anybody disagree?
I agree. So I feel like you'll have a better, a wider net to throw out if you can get your faculty on board with pulling in your community.
Exactly. Your faculty is going to help you pull in the community. You can't do it by yourself. So it's going to be the priority, and these are the things you got to decide early on. You know, you can't take all this on in the first month. You're going to have to figure out what your priorities are and who you're going to get on your team, and then and team is the key word. So, all right, we're a stickler for time. We're gonna do what we say we're gonna do. We're gonna be out of here at 8 o'clock. Stephanie, you were terrific. Thank you for that. And we did not do the second case, so we're gonna start with the second case next week. And I'll lead that. I know Stephanie, you won't be with us, and we'll be praying for you this week as you take on that. And so I'll lead the discussion of the other case, which is a good one about firing a teacher assistant. And we'll get into the politics again of this one. So, but this one, the first case is that Stephanie did is this important role that is you are named principal, and some of you are going to want to be a principal. You're going to have that first job and that first day on the job of what do we attack first, and how do we make this all come together. But the fact that the principal didn't leave you plans for that 3-day workshop, you need to thank that principal for not leaving you anything, because you're going to develop it. It's going to be you, and that's a good thing. Everybody, thank you so much for participating tonight. One of the things we're going to do next week is that I am very cognizant that when people have their cameras on, we can see them, and when they don't have the cameras on, we cannot see them. And I know what I do when my camera's not on. So next week, everybody's going to keep their cameras on when we're together, and we will have a good time discussing next week. We've got 3 more chapters to do out of this book and the cases that go along with it, and I will start us off. So with that, anybody have anything to add? Dale, anything? No?
I'm going to send them a little one-sheeter that might help with their dissertations that came out from tonight about test scores, how you should use them, criterion versus M-class versus normative reference. I'm going to send you a little one-sheeter. I've taken some notes. Might be helpful for you.
That would be good. I was worried when you were helping with dissertation that it would take it from 30 pages to 7 pages like Sarah had. So and they would all revolt. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for being a part of it tonight. Stephanie, blessings to you and to all of you. Thank you so much. Great job for the presenters. And we will see you all next Tuesday. Good night, everybody.